Andy Moore, Automotive Group Hotline. From the morning show, along with James Boyd. It is Kevin Bowen with us. Did you ever bring your own pool cue to Kilroy's or to the Vid or to Kilroy Sports Bar?
Boy, I can't say I ever brought my own pool cue. But speaking of the Vid, I did tweet this out just before IU played in the national title. I thought the bouncer from the Vid should have been the IU representative at the 50-yard line for the coin toss.
Yeah, we all love the video saloon down there. I think I've told you the story before. My high school point guard cut his finger off falling down the stairs there.
I don't know why I just immediately laughed at that. That sounds
You should,
horrific.
because it's funny. If you're going to lose a digit, by God, that's how you lose a digit right there. Yes. I think it was falling down the stairs. Yeah, he'd always explained it that he fell down the stairs, got back up, and then tripped over the guardrail that's right there off of, what is it, Walnut and 7th right there? Is that where it is at the intersection? Walnut and 7th?
Yeah. Well, I mean, those are some steep stairs to be fair.
Yeah, he lost a digit. But he wasn't a pass first point guard anyway, so I don't know how much it really mattered.
I just turned his jumper into a little shot put there. Now, was this like a week before sectionals?
He was working his nub, right? Nah, I don't think it helped any of it. I shot 2 of 10 from distance in my final game in the sectional, so yeah. It's not like I wasn't glorified.
Weren't you pissing kidney stones or something?
No, it was sophomore year when I passed a kidney stone at the half of the Shack-and-Mack game and scored 11 in the second half after passing a kidney stone. And I thought I had a sexually transmitted disease. And I hadn't had sex yet, so I don't know how that would have happened.
Man, they need a 30 for 30 on the Eastern Green.
Yeah, unless I got it from myself, I don't know how that could have been passed to me.
Yeah, the old sock came and bit you out of nowhere and then caused the STD.
I still say this. I don't know how I'm not in the Indiana High School Basketball Hall of Fame, because I damn sure bet you nobody ever passed a kidney stone and scored 11 in the second half after that. Nobody out there has done that.
Well, and now you say that might be a little bit of our fault. I'm trying to think. I don't think Greg Rakestraw would care if I shared this story, but Rake and I do our annual trip to Notre Dame, and we covered a lot in the car ride up there and back, 5 hours of convo. And I want to say Rake is on the board to elect the Hall of Fame class, and I think there is a public hearing for candidates. And the story Rake shared was Robbie Hummel showed up, I believe with maybe a couple of his other teammates, to try and get their head coach from Valpo nominated a couple of years ago. Yeah. So, me and whatever, Jake and James, and we get a couple of Eastern Green teammates, maybe that's on us.
Well, yeah, listen, they'll end up putting Dusty May's ass in there, and I'll be left out. I'll be left out of the whole thing. That's all right, though. I happen to think that that's one of the more unique stories ever, and it is 100% true. And my coach at the time said, you're just out of shape. And I said, no, something. It was like it's like when they shot a musket in the 1800s. That's kind of what it was like right there.
I'm still laughing at teenage youth thinking you had an STD. You probably
have you done it yet?
On top of the world.
I know.
Yeah, telling all your teammates the next day you're on top of the world.
I think I got the clap or something right here, but yeah, how could that be? Those are.
He had 11, he had 6, and he got the clap. That was a hell of a night against Shack-and-Mack.
Well, I think part of it was I felt a little bit. I felt a little bound up prior to that, and I felt a little bit better. But man, I had entire. Like the Flintstones. Fred Flintstone and Barney. They worked at the quarry, I believe. Right. That's what I had. I had like a rock quarry going on. It was problematic, to say the least. And they had to go about retrieving all the sediment, I guess, in this case, from me in a variety of ways. I had like 3 different surgeries because of that. So, and it was all because I blame Big Red because I drank too much Big Red.
God, every time you and I chat about this, it's probably once every 6 months. I swear, my genitalia region just shrivels up.
Bad.
Like, I mean, it just, I get so I got the heebie-jeebies. It's like I'm watching James Boyd's golf swing from yesterday.
It was bad.
All of a sudden freak out.
They had to, in one process, they had to go down, us dudes, we have that thing. They had to go. It's like, remember the Little House on the Prairie when Carrie got caught in the well and they had to go down and they had to try to get her and bring her back. That's what they had to do because one was right there in the urinary tract. And they had to go find the smallest instruments in history to get down there to get it. Like little tiny instruments. Like these, they go, wait a minute. And I heard him say it too. They go, we got normal size instruments right here, but we need smaller instruments. We got to go get smaller. So,
yeah, save those for once you get armpit hair one day.
But no, it was a bad deal, to say the least. But yeah, one of these days, maybe that's going to get the recognition that it deserves. Now, speaking of recognition, Alec Pierce, recognition before preseason, during the preseason, certainly before the start of the season. And will Jonathan Taylor get recognition with an extension? Because I have serious questions regarding both. Do you?
Well, let's start with Pierce. Yeah, I mean, I would say when the Colts start training camp July 28th, 29th, it looks like he very well could be a physically unable to perform list guy to start camp and probably more of an August-y type of return here. So, James and I have talked about it a little bit here this week. Like when I've watched Pierce at practice, I'm like, that dude is limping a little bit more noticeably for a guy that supposedly will be ready for the start of camp. And then obviously we got the clarity from Pierce today. He threw out the timetable of 4 to 6 months. Now, again, this goes back to late March when he had surgery. 4 months would be the end of July. 6 months would be the end of September. So obviously if you cut that in half, you're looking at sometime in August, probably the latter portion. So, yeah, not ideal at all considering expanded role, considering just how important of a player he is.
And the time he had to get it done prior to, right?
Yeah, so they basically, at the end of the season, he had some pain in the last month of the year. At the end of the season, they decided to go a little PRP action on the ankle to see if that would solve it. And then as January went into February, they were like, okay, this is not getting any better. So they decided for surgery. It's kind of a little bit like the Zaire Franklin thing from last year, John, where Franklin's surgery was early May, that he actually came back for the offseason program. And that's where he had the issue that they needed surgery on. And again, in an ideal world, you'd be doing all these surgeries on January 7th or whenever the season ends there. So, yeah, not good at all that you couldn't have gotten this done at the start of the offseason.
Kev, do we categorize that decision as yet another long line of bad Colts decisions? Because I'm sorry. I know it's really easy for me to sit here and say, but if you need it, you need it, do it. All right? If it's painful, do it. You had all this time to do it, and now you're going to really you shrink the time to when you're going to get back and get ready for a season in which so many things have to go right. And among those have-tos that have to go right would be Alec Pierce. But would we not describe the timing of this as being yet another faulty Colts decision? Because, honestly, I do. I think that's ridiculous. Why not push it back and start it and get the process going earlier and be fully prepared if you know you want this guy around for the long term?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when you hear Pierce say that he had the pain for multiple years, too, you're kind of curious, okay, could this have even been done in a prior offseason, not a contract offseason, if you want to, take it a step further. I think anytime we get into these medical talks, first off, obviously the player has to agree to whatever is being done. And, anytime hearing Pierce describe it today got me back on the Andrew Luck topic when, by all accounts, Luck opted not to have surgery in that initial, I'm trying to think what year it would have been, I guess 2015 off season. So he comes back and plays 2016, but never practices on those Thursday practices. So, he plays that year. I want to say he played every game but one. I think he had a concussion on a Thanksgiving night. That was the only game that he missed. But, again, if Luck has that surgery in the first offseason versus opting for just the rehab, does he go down the amount of physical toll, rehab, start, stop, practice, don't practice? Clearly that wear and tear took a lot on him physically and mentally. So honestly, when Pierce was describing some of it today, it had me thinking a little bit from an Andrew Luck standpoint. So, yeah, I mean, these decisions, there's probably some we don't even know about, where at times they have done surgery and where it could have been either or, and maybe it has benefited the player greatly. The Colts if you want to give the Colts credit medically for something, one of the few things they did was say that Bob Sanders is not red flagged on their draft board like so many NFL teams did, and then boom, he turned out to obviously be a massive reason why they won a Super Bowl. So I get it. There are probably more that we hear about on the other side of it, like this one here. But yeah, it's definitely a fair thought, and I appreciate Pierce kind of clearing it all up, and I thought providing really a lot of detail on his process today.
It's Kevin Bowen, Fan Morning Show. He and James Boyd, weekday morning 7 until 10 a.m. on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So if you were a betting dude right now, would you bet that this is the final season of Jonathan Taylor here?
Boy, it's a great question. There's part of me, if I was Carly Gordon, I would say no extensions to anyone.
Correct.
Bernard Ryman last year was one I know we debated kind of in a similar light. I looked at Ryman as a pretty, no matter who the GM is, I think you would want a left tackle like him. Whereas you're talking about Taylor into a third contract at the age of, I guess he'd be 28. Nelson into a third contract at the age of 30. If you are potentially going to fire your decision makers at the end of this season, I don't think you want to. You're already going to hand a new GM, playing out this hypothetical, of course. You're already going to hand the new GM no first round pick. Do you really want to hand, him, contracts for players that either A, he might not agree with, the age he might not agree with, the positional value he might not agree with, all of those things. I get that, Nelson and Taylor specifically obviously have been super quality players, great players. So, Nelson, a Hall of Fame caliber. Honestly, Taylor is kind of on that path if he continues it. But, the reality is, how much have you won with those two? Do you need to allocate your resources better if you are making a regime change? So, yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to watch play out. I do think internally the Colts look at some of the cap space they have, and they think they'll use some of it on extensions. But, again, that's probably more of a Carly Gordon question, I would think, than a Chris Ballard question, at least if I was her.
Yeah, there's zero way until at least you can visualize success in this season and what could translate into the next. You can't do it. You cannot do it. And starting over means starting over. And I like Jonathan Taylor a great deal, but I think we all know what path this is going to be if things don't work out. And I think we're both on the same page with that. There's no way you can offer an extension anywhere near before knowing how this team looks. And really, hell, Kev, between you and I right here, I think that the first 4 weeks of the season is going to dictate some terms on how we're thinking about this team, or at least very well could. Now, you could say it did a year ago and we saw what happened, but I think we're a little bit more savvy with this group after what happened after the quarterback was compromised a year ago. But, yeah, I think you're going to know a lot of things about this team early in the season as opposed to late in the season, per usual.
Yeah, I think it's a very front-loaded schedule. Again, Baltimore, Kansas City, Houston, first 3 weeks. Then it's Washington overseas, and then you come back and you're at Pittsburgh. And I want to say the stat that I've been coming back to describe the first half of the season, I think of the 9 teams you play to start the year, I want to say 8 of them have been in the playoffs either this year this past year or the year prior. So I get there's roster turnover, but still, I mean, it's not like you're playing a bunch of, late in the year you play the Giants, for example, you play the Browns. There's a few more of kind of those sorts of opponents later in the year than you do have early. And also, I would assume, based off her comments at the end of the year, a key part of the Carly Gordon evaluation will be how this team ends the season. closes the year. Obviously, you got to start the year off well, but, how much did you hear? Hey, we got to handle adversity better and, this and that. So, that probably gets into a Taylor Nelson situation. Like if they're having great years, and you're having a good year as a team, all of a sudden, do you want to try to extend them at some point during the season? And then do they sit there and say, well, wait a minute, yes, but I'd like to be here, but do I need to play the agent game? And to be very clear, I think, on people, because I get it when, when I asked Taylor today, like, hey, have you thought about having a new contract before the start of the season? I was just curious just what his tone would be, because, I think back to 3 years ago this week, I can remember exactly where we were out on the Colts practice field when all of a sudden Taylor walks off it. And again, me or Joel Erickson, someone, threw him that similar question. And all of a sudden, Jonathan Taylor went from the man has never really said anything, remotely controversial in his NFL career to being like, yeah, it's pretty frustrating because we're really far away on contract talks right now. That was not his tone today, to be very clear. And, again, leverage-wise, he's a little bit older. He hasn't had the same sort of recent success that he had going into the end of his rookie contract. But I don't – basically, I say all this I don't envision – maybe I'm wrong – I don't envision Malky Kawa, his agent, and Carly Ursay-Gordon in a Twitter war here over the next 3 months.
No, you're probably right about that. Kevin Bowen joins us. I want to move to the Pacers for one quick question before I cut you loose here. But obviously this is just opinion-based, which is what we all do every single day right here. But we know that the Colts, at least with a statement, seem cool with the Bears and Hammond, if that comes to fruition, actually does happen. Have you taken time to think about the late Jim Irsay, if he would be okay with the Bears playing in the state of Indiana?
That's an interesting thought. I mean, Jim always went to bat for the Colts on a very NFL, league-wide landscape.
I'm guessing he would hate it. I'm guessing he would not like it if he were still here and making the decisions. That's just me and my interpretation. That's why I asked you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think, that might be one of the things you would point to as, he would do things differently than his daughters. I think maybe staying at Grand Park, for example, would be something that maybe he would be more inclined to do.
They will regret that, by the way, too.
Yeah. I think it's a big bummer. This one, Again, Irsay, why, it's interesting when you brought up the Pacers initially, kind of my mind went here, John. I thought to myself, what are the people, what does Visit Indy think? What does the sports court think about this? Because while the walkability to our downtown arenas, stadiums speak for themselves, there still is the element of does the new flashier place get whatever.
You lose stuff. Kev, you lose stuff. Right. We become a loser here. Yes.
Right. Big Ten championship for football. Does a college football national title not come back here a second time? Does it go there instead? Again, the walkability we're going to have over Hammond, assuming this all plays out. But still, do they say, hey, we need to satisfy the Midwest. Let's do it in the new, place here instead of going back to Old Faithful. You'd love that our reputation that is so well thought of would stand above the rest, but that's kind of a thought that I've had through this process, thinking about it more from a city standpoint and an event standpoint. We've held everything. Like, is this Hammond Stadium going to be one where whatever, they create it to host a World Cup if it ever comes back? Like those sorts of things, that's kind of where my mind is gone. But yeah, to answer your question, knowing how much Jim Irsay had, I think Jim Irsay stuck his chest out a lot for the Colts on hey, we're not this little brother, in the NFL. He did it big time with the Combine. He was always very vocal on the lack of primetime games. So, I could see him, potentially being a little bit more vocal about it.
Yeah, I would say he doesn't like it. You brought up a great point, too. I'm sorry, the only reason I can view them moving from Westfield, back to their place is on the cheap. That's the only way I view it, and that to me is not good. That's a discussion for another day, but you bring up a great point regarding that, the final season in Westfield coming up later on this summer. Hey, quickly, what do you expect Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, and Rick Carlisle to do? You got any expectation coming up later on this summer in what they, after that disappointment in the draft lottery, what they expect or what you expect them to go out and do with this team this summer?
Yeah, it's a great question. I assume I would, the baseball analogy, maybe like a double type of swing. They've always been so big on the, our core, and obviously Zubats is a little bit different, but there's probably some teams, some iterations that would have looked at Obi Toppin or TJ McConnell's contract and their bench roles and said, that's expendable. Whereas it seems like the Pacers are a little bit more pro of like, no. Those guys mean more than just, again, what their age and what their value is. And, Rick, I felt like he kind of threw up the caution flag late in the season. I know he did it with us when we had him on right after the year ended of like, we have backup plans in place. And so I assume that will be something of note. Now, again, how do you go about acquiring it? Do you give up even more future picks? Are you trading a Jarris Walker? What exactly does that look like? So my assumption is they will do something of note, and I guess of note, I mean like, a key kind of six-man type of role, which again might not jump out at you, but you're one injury away from all of a sudden needing that player potentially to be a starter for you. I think you have to try and explore it like that, especially because, are you on, whatever, shorter window here, contractually, things like that.
Yep. 2-year window to make it happen and to make the belief that you have in this core group become a reality. And that's what you're looking at right there. Kevin Bowen and James Boyd, the Fan Morning Show, weekday morning, 7 until 10 a.m., coming up tomorrow morning as well. Kev's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, man. I appreciate you. Hopefully James told you that I shut the lights out last night and I refused to go home even though there was a tornado evidently near my home. So I said, no, you know what? I'm playing too well right now. Can't go home.
None of that surprises me. Again, you need a 30 for 30 on your basketball career life. Man. That would have added to it last night.
Sports Century, JMV Hoops. That's great right there. I'll tune in immediately. Thanks, brother.
All right, see you, John.
Andy